Hello everyone and welcome. This is Mike and welcome back to the channel. So this is going to be part two of a previous video that I did on converting a C# script into a PowerShell script. So in the first video, I tried to keep the script as close as I could to the .NET original, or the C# original, I should say. And so in this one, we're going to make some changes to it to make it potentially more useful, at least for what I want. Obviously, the point of doing this stuff is to obviously get potentially what you want out of it. And so for me, I want to make some changes to this to make it a little better for what I might be looking for it if I were to use this in a production scenario. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. So this is going to be part two of this converting C# to PowerShell and making it better. So let me switch over to the lab environment here, and we could have a look at what we have here. So basically, the script I have up here is as it stands from the last video. Okay, so if you haven't checked out that video yet, please do so. And again, I have this sample up there if you a link to download it if you want it. Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to do, and I kind of noticed this after the fact, is it's not necessarily .NET, but I don't really like this line right here. Okay, so if you recall at the end of the last video, I added a couple out nulls here to um, clean up the output a bit, okay, so that we had nice clean group output when we were running this. So if I go ahead and I run the script, let's just make sure it's still working. SAM account name, I was using user2 as my test user. And we could see that, oh, we have nothing. So let's see what's up with that. All right, so let's see what's going on here. Okay, so my apologies on that. I paused the video for a moment and had a look, and for whatever reason, the Active Directory module in PowerShell here was not returning group memberships. So fixed. Didn't really fix anything, just kind of reran. Closed PowerShell, reopened, and if we run this again, now we're getting results again. Okay, so this was the script as built in the last video. I did modify the names of the groups some so you could see the nesting that's happening here. So again, just to introduce everybody, user2 is a member of these global groups, and they all start with GL. So we have those three. These are also members of groups themselves. So there's group nesting happening here. So we could see, like, for instance, this group is a member of this group. So there's the nesting that's happening. This one right here, this is a member of this universal group, which is then a member of this domain local group. So again, showing the nesting happening there. Okay, so everything is working after that little hiccup there. So now the first thing that I'd like to do in here is I'd like to see if I could clean this up a little bit. Okay, now I know in the last video I was trying to keep things as much the same as they were, and this really isn't .NET here. So I should say this isn't really C#. So I was trying to keep things as apples to apples as I could. But now that I'm making my own changes here, I'm not sticking to the constructs of whatever that C# sample was. So I'd like to see if I can change this around to make it look more PowerShell-ish. Okay. So, so in order to do that, we're kind of looking at this object right here. So what I would do is right in front of that is I'd throw in a write debug line to give me the ability to pause the script like right around here so I could examine what's in this variable so I could see if I can do something different here. Okay. Um, so let's see if we could do something with that. So this is my get groups script. So we'll go ahead and and run get groups, and we'll use the debug parameter on it, which again, you'll notice that's not in my parameter block, but you get all of these common parameter support like verbose, debug, error action, error warning by adding commandlet binding here. You're adding support for the common parameters. So let's go ahead and do that. And it's going to give me an option here. See, it kind of stopped at that testing line that I had. So you can see that right here. So it's basically the script is hanging at line 33 right now. And if I tell it to, I could say continue through the script, continue through all of the right debug lines that would be there. I only have one, so that's not really that big a deal. Halt the script or suspend. So suspend is the one I want here because I want to pause the script right there. Okay, and now what that allows me to do, if I kind of slide this over to the right a little bit, is I can now examine what's in this SID result variable right here. So if I type that in into my console, I could see what was actually in there. Okay, so I have an object, which in this case should be, what type of object were we making out of here? So SID result, so that should be something from this directory searcher one here. So we can kind of, if we wanted to, we could take SID result, pipe it to get member, and see we do have that search result in there from the directory services namespace here. So the search result class. And we could see in there that there's two properties to go with this object. There's a property called properties, which is neat name there. And then we have path. Okay, and when we just outputted the variable like I did earlier, you can see again there's the property called path and there's the property called properties. Now when you see output like this, you can see that the properties property, I apologize for that, has some things in it, and you have curly brackets around it. Right? Now typically what that signifies is that there's something in there. So there's something in there. Well, there's always something in there. What we mean, or what I mean, is like if you look at path, path is a property, and there's a value in there, a single value. Whereas here, this particular property has multiple objects in it. Okay, so that's why again they're kind of in the brackets there. Now, in order to enumerate that out, you could take the variable and then do a dot, and then and then call the property you want to enumerate all the objects out. You could also use a for each object commandlet if you wanted to do that as well, but this is probably the easiest. All right, and then we could see that we're getting inside of properties, there's again two things in there. There's a name property and an AD as path property. And if you look at the name property, that also has brackets around it telling me that, again, there could be multiple things in there. Okay, so it's basically like that I wanted. Okay, so now what they were doing in the script here, if I put this up here, is they were again doing this line right here, so SID result.properties, and then this right here, they're also enumerating the objects that are in the name property. That's what that's doing. That's kind of how an array list works. You can call a particular property by that, by the actual the the actual name of it, which again happens to be called name, and then you want the first object in it. Okay, that's what that 0 represents. Well, if I look at this, I believe there's only one thing in there to begin with. Okay, because I think this is finding one group at a time. Because remember, we're kind of looking through all of the different groups that someone was a member of, and we're taking because remember, we got a list of SIDs that the user was a member of for the groups. Remember this token groups object or property that we were looking at that had a list of SIDs that the user was a member of for groups. And then we need to take each SID that was the result there, so this result bytes, and then figure out what group that actually is, right? So we have the SID, we want the name of the group. So this is really only returning one thing at a time because we're inside of this for each here. So I think I could probably simplify this output line a lot easier just by literally doing sidResult.properties.name. And that should get, in this case, the name of the group, which is what I wanted. So we could probably clean this little output line up a little better here. All right, so let me go ahead and do that. Um, so first of all, let me save this because I'm making changes. So I might as well put it in another script here. So maybe get groups two. Let's do that. Save it to the same spot, and then I'll make that change here. So I'll do dot properties dot name, and that should be a little more simple, in the output here to see what it looks like. So so we made that change. So now I'll come back in here. I will exit the debug session because I'm done editing the version of the script that I have in memory here. We'll halt the script. And then let's try the new script, which was get groups 2, same account name, user 2, and yep, everything still works the same. All right, cool. So I think that's kind of a worthwhile change there. Definitely simplifies when you have a variable, getting the objects out of a property that's there. Okay, so you got the properties here, and then that had objects in it and getting the values out of the name property that were inside of it. So that's just regular old enumeration, which you could do with a variable. Right? And then whatever that result is, I'm adding it to this array list. And again, remember, this is inside the for each construct. So for each SID that the user is a member of a group, it's going to just keep adding the names of the groups into this, and then basically I just kick out that to finish off. Right? Now, one of the things that I thought might be more useful though is in some cases I don't necessarily want all of the groups to spit out. I don't necessarily just want all of the groups. I might want to pick the direct group memberships, the nested group memberships, or both. Is basically what I'm thinking of here. Right? So the regular, the other ones, so the regular direct group memberships, the nested group memberships, or both would be output that I would be interested in. Right? And so that's kind of where I want to take this. Okay. And again, there's not necessarily always going to be one particular way to do this. So this is just kind of a way of that I thought might be an interesting way to do this. So the first thing here, obviously, if I want to do something, like if I want the direct group memberships, the nested group memberships, or if I want, everything, I'm going to need a parameter for that. So up in my parameter block, I'll go add another parameter, and maybe I'll call this parameter, output, something like that. It doesn't look great like that. Okay, output. So output, I'm going to feed it a string, right? Because I'm going to say, what is the output? Direct, nested, or maybe all. And then I might also, because those are the only three values that I want, I might just make a validate set out of that. So that way, the people running the script can only supply one of those possible values. So again, it would be let's do direct, nested, and all. And since someone might forget this, I'll set it as a default value to all. So that way, if someone forgets to run output, it's going to be set to all for me to begin with. Okay. All right, now, next part here, obviously, with the way that this works in the where is it here in the token groups uh, attribute, it makes no distinction between direct and indirect groups, direct or nested groups. It's just one big pile of output. So if I do a separate query like get ADUser, and let's say identity user 2, and then look at the, not partition, look at the property attribute member of, because that's not one of the ones that gets returned normally. So if you just do get ADUser, you could see like the 10 properties that are brought back by default. So if I want more from that, I can basically grab everything by doing property star, and then all of the properties get returned here. But specifically, the one that I'm after is this member of. So this would be the direct memberships. So that's kind of reflecting, if you look at the user and Active Directory users and computers, you could see that it's, oh, right there. You can see the direct memberships right here. Okay, so that's what we want to. That's one way to get the direct memberships. That's an easy one. It was the nested groups that was always the challenge. So just to get the regular groups, I could just do this type of query here if I wanted to do that. Okay, so I could add that in, maybe maybe right at the beginning. If I wanted to do that, just have that information there. Dollar groups equals get ADUser, and the ADUser we're getting is in the variable SAM account name. Oop, I should probably also put identity in there. All right, and then properties, we want the member of property. All right. Now, what I then want to do is I need to enumerate the values out of there. Right? Because again, if I look at the output here, properties member of, if I look at the output, I literally want the values that are in member of. Okay, so I need to enumerate those. So you could do this really simply just by sending it over to for each object and say member name member of. Right? So basically, like, what property do you want to grab the values of, or what method did you want to launch? Right? So in this case, I want the objects that are in the member of property. And so I just get those in their raw form. Right? Now, the way that it produces the output, it has the group names in their distinguished name format. And the way that my script grabs groups is literally just their display name, right? And this is what I want here. So ultimately what I want is I want to compare these to these, because if there's something in here that's not in here, this is your nested memberships, right? To tell the difference between the two. So compare one to the other. And if it's there, it's nested, right? Is basically what we're looking at, right? Um, so in order to do that, I need to make this side here look like this. So that means I need to grab this part of this overall, oops, of this overall string. So I have this overall string. I want to grab this particular part and toss out the rest. Okay. So I could do that using a, uh, a replace construct. Right. So to do that, I'm going to need to use the advanced syntax for each object. And I'm going to have to use some regex. So let's see here. So for each object, we're going to use process And we'll again do the same thing we did before, $_dot member of. All right, so this right here is the exact same syntax as doing this up here. Just this is called advanced syntax, and this is called basic syntax. So if you notice, it kicks out the exact same thing. Now, what's interesting about this is I can now work with this because these are now strings. So if I, take this to get member, I can see that I'm getting strings as my output here. So all I did was pipe that output over to GM, which is the alias for get member. So that means I can work with these strings using regex if I wanted to. All right? In this case, I certainly do. Okay, so what we want is we're going to use regular expressions. We're going to use something called capture groups to grab a piece of what's happening here. So inside the script block, and just to make this not carry over to the next line, I'm going to do a carriage return after that pipe. Actually, well, let me do that. No, it won't because it runs it. Oh, well. Okay, so I'm going to have to carry over to the next line. I apologize. Okay, so in here, we're going to use replace. And then typically with replace, what you have is what you want to find. So like say if I say CN equals, and then you have a comma, and then what do you want to replace it with? So maybe I want to replace it with, I don't know, triple A, something like that. And notice, see how that works. So it took the CN equal in those strings and replaced it with AAA. Right? Now, obviously, that's not what I want to do here, but that's in essence what replace does. So in this case, I want to use regular expressions. So what I need to do is I need to, in the replace from line here, I need to describe what this line looks like. Okay, so basically it's going to start with CN equal, which is what we want. So it's literally those exact characters, a capital C, a capital N, an equal sign. So I've identified that. And then I don't know what's going to come after that. So in regex terms, that's going to be a dot, which represents any character. And then I can use a star, and that represents multiple of them. And then I'm going to have a comma. So because again, there's multiple of them, but I now want it to pay attention to that comma, and then any character, multiple of them. So that would again further describe the string, okay, like so. So that's what I'm looking for as the replace from. And then we could say, let's do what we want to replace it to. Let's again just do the AAA and see what it comes up with. So yeah, so that identified the whole string, and then it replaced the whole string with just the AAA characters there. All right, so that's cool. So I described the whole string. Now you might be thinking, well, that's not what we want either, but we're getting there. So now I want to grab out of this replace, I want to grab this particular part right here. Okay, because that represents this particular portion of text. So any character, multiple of them, up to that comma. So see that right there. Any character, multiple of them, up to that comma right there. All right. So to do that in regex, you create what's called a capture group. You basically put those things into parentheses, like so. And then when you want to call it, you call it by using a reference here. So in this case, I want the first capture group. So in regex terms, that's $1. Now, I don't want PowerShell to treat this as a variable. I need PowerShell to treat this as the literal $, not that this is a variable, because it's not. It's a capture group. So on the to side here, I need to use single quotes so that PowerShell again treats this as the literal $sign symbol here. And then let's see what we got. So, okay, so what it grabbed. So it got rid of the CN part. That's cool. We got that. And okay, so with regex, there's when you do these wild cards here, so multiple characters, they can be greedy. Like that's an actual word here, like the actual word, greedy. So an operator can be greedy to grab as much as it could. And kind of the concept here is I'm having it stop at a comma, right? But if you look here, there's multiple commas here. So basically what I told it to do was match multiple, so any character, multiple of them up to the comma. Well, that could stop there, but remember, a comma could be included as any character. So this match, which is what I want, but what regex is doing is it's grabbing as much as it can. See, like right there, there's the last comma it could stop on, and that was my result that I got. Okay, so it grabbed as much as it could. It ignored the first comma, it ignored the second comma, it stopped at the last one. Okay, because that's what I had. Any character, multiple of them, and then the comma is the next thing I'm telling it to pay attention to. All right. So to make this particular match here be not greedy, you could put after it, if I come in here, you put a question mark, and then that will make it stop the first time it sees a comma. So any character, multiple of them, don't be greedy, and then the comma, and then multiple, any character, multiple of them. Right? So that should now stop right there. So this should, so it should stop at that comma right there. So let's give that a shot. And cool, perfect. So that's what we got for output. Okay, so now this line right here can go right into my script, and that would grab the groups and store them into this dollar groups here. All right. Maybe I'll call this uh, direct groups. Okay, because that's what it is, direct group membership. And again, I'm just carriage returning after the pipe just to bring that down to the next line. So this here is realistically one line of code. I just carriage return it so it's easier to see. All right. So now I'll have the direct group memberships in this variable. Okay, so that's kind of step number one. So now we're going to come down into this area here where we're putting things into uh, this user nested membership. So this array list right here. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to add another criteria here, right? Because this would have, I want this variable now not to have every group, I want it to have just the nested groups, right? So what we could do is when we run this, we have another criteria. So we had a criteria first. If SID result was not null, we would add whatever was in there in here. So I also want to maybe throw another comparison into here. So if it's not null and it's not in the direct groups, right? So we could do something like that. So let's maybe add an and we could say $SID result not in, oops, not in dollar direct groups. Okay, so something like that. So SID result is not null, and the SID result is not in the list of direct groups. So that means it would only match up on the nested groups. Okay, so if we just make that change here, and when I run this, I should just see now the nested groups. if I saved my changes. And SID result, not in, and again, I called that direct groups, just checking my math here. Okay, we save changes. Okay, so let's see. And we're not seeing it as of yet. Okay, so where did I veer off here? So let's see. Okay, so the first thing that I think, let's see, when I put this line in here, I have a direct, um, I have a static value, so that should be same account name. Not that that should make a difference here, but we'll grab that. So identity, properties, member of, for each, dollar underscore, member of, replace. Okay, so that should be fine there. Let's see if that makes a difference. Okay, nope, not yet. Okay, that did need to be cleaned up though. So that's definitely one thing. And so we might just have an issue with what's happening with the logic down here. All right. So let's maybe let's do write debug again, and let's see if we have information there. So let's run this with debug, suspend, dollar, direct groups. Okay, so that looks good. And dollar said result dot name. Okay, so that has the correct stuff in it. That's cool. Okay, so it looks like we've got good stuff in there. And it could just be that we just have an issue happening right here with the comparison. Okay, so I think I see what I did here. So basically, when you look at SID result, it's the whole object, right? So when we looked at SID result, okay, this certainly doesn't look like a list of strings here. So I need to have this list of strings compared against the values that are in name. So that's what I did here. So just like right here, I would need to use that right here. Okay, so that's what I want to compare. Okay, like so. So now that should work. So let's see, run it without debug. And cool. So it just has the nested groups here. Okay. It also has kind of the default ones. I'm not going to mess with that. We'll just chalk that up as that's just what it looks like. All right. So cool. So we have that. So now when I get into my output phase where I output this variable, I now have two different variables in play here, right? I've got this one that has the direct group memberships, and I have this one which has just the nested memberships. Okay, so we want to clean this output up. So probably, and we want to have the output based on whatever value was selected in the parameter. So the easiest way to do that, in all honesty, is using a switch construct. So we have switch. We're looking at whatever is $output. All right, and then we're gonna have a script block here. All right. Now inside inside the script block, let's say if someone picked the value direct, what I want to do is I just want to output the variable with direct groups in it. So direct groups. Okay, so that's going to be if they chose direct. So if the value, if literally the string direct is in this variable, this is what it's going to do. So then we'll do the nested. So if the value in $output is nested, we're going to do we're going to output the user nested membership. And then lastly, if the value was all, we will output the direct groups, and then I'm going to throw a semicolon there, which acts as a carriage return, and then I'm going to output the user nested membership. Okay? And so that's what we're going to do at switch. So let me tab those in to make it look nice. Get rid of this output line right here because we don't need to output that variable again. Bring this back. And then that's going to be what our output's going to look like. All right, so let's see if I typed all this incorrect and see if it works. Okay, so we'll run the script. Remember, I have it defaulted to all. So if we don't supply a value to $output, that's what we're going to get. All right, so let's go ahead and run that. And that looks good, so that's got everything in it. But now let's see if we can clean the output. So output, I want direct. So there's the direct members. We want nested. There's the nested membership. And again, just test to make sure all works. You could do that as well. So if you notice, one of the nice things I like about doing validate sets that I did up here is when you validate the, what you want, you can tab complete that. So notice on output here, if I do a tab, all, direct, nested. So you can tab complete the values. So if you've ever noticed how in some PowerShell commands where you can tab complete the value on a parameter, that might be why. It's because in the code, they had a validate set there. So in this case, we could do that, like so. Okay, so that cleans up the output here and makes the script a lot more functional. So someone running it could get the direct members, the nested members, or all of the groups, nested and direct combined together. Okay, so that's what our code is. So we kind of added validate setup here. So we added the output parameter up here with a validate set and a default value. We grabbed the direct group memberships by doing a get 80 user query, which I then had to clean up a bit. So I had to replace the strings that were in member of, just grabbing the actual display name. So I had to do a little bit of regex trickery on that. Then we brought that down to here, where we added another comparison into the if construct. So if the group wasn't in the direct membership, it got added to the nested. And then we had switch for the output here and output the direct groups, the nested groups, or both together. And again, this semicolon is acting as a carriage return, so it's kind of like these are two separate lines. It's running this line, and then it's running this line. And really all they're doing is just outputting to the command line. Okay, so those are the edits that I would do on this. And you'll actually see this in an upcoming video I've got planned where I'm going to take this script and use it as a basis for doing some HTML reporting. I want to make an HTML report that has information about a user, their direct group memberships, and their nested group memberships all wrapped up in like a nice HTML package. So look for that in an upcoming video. But again, this was just kind of the start here. So I figured I'd make a video out of this. The changes that I wanted to make to this script I was poking around with in the last video. So again, any questions or whatever, just give me a shout out in the comments. If you like this, please give me a like. Consider a subscribe. Definitely helps the growth of my channel and allows me to put out some more content. So with that, we'll bid you a good day, and we'll see you in the next video.